Welcome back. You are watching Moving Forward, and it was hot off camera, and that's the way it should be, because this topic is just too important for it to be handled so placidly. We must really get to the bottom of this, and Freddie was making a point.
No, I just want to finish the point by simply saying that we have allowed those who oppress us in 2018 to have the power to so do. We have forgotten who gave them the power. We have become a society of dependency. You got to go to the politician to get a scholarship. You got to go to the politician to write you a letter to get a job, instead of standing on your own merit. See, before, in order for me to achieve my accomplishments, I had to do it on my merit, because the fellow wasn't doing nothing for you. When he look at you, you're not worthy, because you are less than. So you had to be 10 times better than the other fellow to succeed. So that is the basis upon which I stand. What I say is, cause those who we put in power to represent us to understand that you are the servant and you work for me. See, we moved away from that, and those of us who have become ambitious with the political aspirations, they use the foundation as stepping stones to get to position of national prominence, and when they get elected, they develop amnesia.
Let's hear from Donnalee. Lest it be said, lest it be said that the three males dominated the poor female. We don't want that charge.
She's a dean now, don't
Yes,
forget her.
go right ahead.
My question is to ask, how did we get here?
Yeah.
How did we get here? And the only way we are going to move ahead, if we answer that question, we have to know how we get here before we could say we are moving ahead. We know our churches. I'm from the church community. I work heavily in the church. I work heavily in many civic organizations. But the question still, and we all have safety nets. But why are we just creating safety nets rather than correcting the problem? All of our churches have safety nets. But we shouldn't need safety nets if we ask the question, how did we get here? And this takes me way back earlier in the talk show. We talk about, children having children. What are we doing about it?
That's right.
All the 14 to whatever the standard age is for these children, let us ask, what are we doing about it? We heard the report in our conference that 98% of these children, when nothing is happening, when you try to prosecute, it's hundreds of them at the what's the home where they go, teenage pregnancy program? PACE. And so what are we going to do? What are we as women going to do about our young girls that are just lining up in there in the hundreds and children having children?
But it appears it's almost as if it's an unwritten agreement. Let me state what I mean. This society pays little serious attention to the plight of our children. And they allow our children to basically live almost a parallel life to the adult community. And it seems that as long as there are no major upheavals, no sensational activities the children do, they feel like they get involved in the drugs and the gangs, promiscuous behavior, and very little seems to be done to address that. It's almost as if the reigning generation is saying, we're going to do what we want to do. Y'all can go over there and do what you want to do, just don't make no big trouble. And on the other side, the youngsters accept that. They just do what they want to do and operate within the sphere that they have been allowed to. But they only react if you try to restrict that.
Reverend Dr. C.B. Moss, I have been around young parents today, and I hear them asking the children, what would you like to eat?
True.
You want to go to McDonald's or you want to go to Wendy's? Well, I've never had that privilege. as a parent, you are responsible for the upbringing of that child. We need to get back to the basics. And I gotta start there because you, Lady Donnalee, Bowe asked the question, how did we get here? Well, we allowed ourselves to let down our responsibility of taking charge of our country, of our families, of our communities, and of our children. You take your child to school today. The child come home and complain. Instead of the parents going to the teacher and trying to find out what's wrong, the parent want to go and fight the teacher. This is happening, is what I'm told in the schools.
It is happening because I think we have become very self-centered. We've become very self-centered.
We've become very irresponsible.
Well, that creates irresponsibility, and it's all about us. And the truth is, we've been conditioned to that. We have embraced, the idea of having stuff as being the important things.
Materialism.
And our leaders have perpetuated that in us to a large extent. The emphasis is on being rich, get wealthy, move up and move on. I know you have something to say.
Itching to say
I see
something.
that.
Something Fred said the other day at the conference, I'd like to take us back to that point. When we started the program, I think there was a little difference of opinion as to what to begin with, the national anthem or the prayer. Fred said something that stuck with me, and I think it would bear saying it right now. We have put God behind us. God should be in front. Begin, he said at the conference, let us begin with God.
And then country.
What has happened, a lot of our young people do not have a fear of God. We all grew up with that fear. We all knew you had to have reverence. That's something that's not heard of among our youth because they have an amoral kind of existence. They don't know what it is to have respect. When we passed the church in the early days, back in the day, what we did with our hat.
You reverent
You reverence.
the presence of
Yes.
the house of God.
We miss that.
Yes,
A
of
lot of
course.
our young people, I do from time to time, I go to the streets and I call a couple of young persons and I said, name me 5 of the 10 commandments. And they can't give me 5 of the 10 commandments. The commandments are the basis for our laws of the land. They don't know you shall not steal, you shall not, commit adultery, you shall not lie. These things are the commandments of God. And if you raise a generation of people who don't know what God said, then they're going to do what they want.
So,
And they've created their own reality. So how else can we, if the Bible says, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things are passed away, behold, all things become new. These are the guiding influences in our lives. I grew up as a little boy in the Boys Brigade. The object of the Boys Brigade, I learned it as an 8-year-old, the advancement of Christ's kingdom among boys, the promotion of habits of obedience, reverence, discipline, self-respect, and all that tends towards true Christian manliness. I learned that as a little boy, and that stuck with me. I'm 68 years old, but I learned that as a child. And so it stuck with me, it guided me. I had some bearing. But our children don't have any bearings.
Well,
so what percentage of our children are going to church?
No,
though?
just let me address the Boys Brigade thing. We don't want to talk so much about what the problem is. We all know the problem is. What are some of the solutions?
Right.
Here's what I'm saying. You have the disintegration of the home, the family, the youth. You have an organization like the Boys Brigade. What is being done to use that organization? And by that I mean, I've been saying for years, the state should get with all of these organizations, work out an arrangement where the state would support. These organizations are all fading off.
So, CB,
I agree.
So Reverend Dr. Moss, so we recognize where we are. Like you said, we all know what the problem is.
Yes.
we also recognize that we have a responsibility as a country, as a state, as a community, and as family. What are we going to do to cause those who we have put to represent us to understand that you are not any longer going to be allowed to do what you just want to do, but rather you're going to do what the people of the country believe you ought to do to fix the problem. You see, time for talk is over. When you have a man feeling that he could roll up on a police officer sitting at a school waiting for his son and put a bullet in his head, well, what more evidence do you need that something is wrong with that kind of society? Yeah. You ask, what are we going to do? There are many of us who are doing it on a daily basis. You just had a symposium. I attended another one yesterday. I am here today on this platform speaking to the issue, trying to generate, and you may wonder why I'm wearing my paraphernalia of my fraternity, because I want to send a message to my fraternity brothers. You would remember when you and I served on the same, in the same Rotary Club, and we addressed Program Shore. This was a program where young men were taken out of the regular school system because they were falling through the cracks, not because they were not academically inclined. As a matter of fact, many of them were very academically inclined, but what they did not have was the guidance.
Right.
They were so street smart that the teachers couldn't deal with them in school, so they had to put them in a special program. Well, we went in there, and we went in there with a program to address these young men, but meet them where they were. Not to condemn them, but to find out where their strengths was. Their strength may be in Junkanoo, their strength may be in boxing, their strength may be in painting, but wherever their strengths were, to accentuate that and accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. That is where we need to start. We have a problem. We've got a generation of people now, young men, walking around with the underwear showing and their pants down to their knees. Well, come on, man. You see, you said you were 68 years old.
When it reaches
we were
that
wearing
stage,
our pants with our shirts so stiff.
When it reaches
because
that
we had
stage,
pride.
it is too late. Donnalee.
Yes, I will continue where he left off. Yes, we must give each child self-actualization. That is finding who they are through whatever talents they possess.
When you say we, who are we?
We, civil society, which includes all of these groups we speak about, the church, all of the community groups. They must come together and take control. Because we see one day before the conference, we are preparing. I go back to what he said. Father, how often do we have a father picking up their children?
What are the best forms?
It brings it home to where we are, but we are not going, we are saying we are moving forward with a program of where we need to get. And we need to create all of these programs, have them well funded, have them well maintained.
Stick a pin. You are on target. You said have them well funded. Who's going to fund it?
The funding, as far as I know, there is a lot of funding that exists. We just need to source this funding to develop. In order to source funding, you must develop programs and activities.
Stick a pin again. A lot of these organizations don't even know how to source the funding. They don't know where the fundings are. Here's what I'm saying. We've got to call a spade a spade. It is the state's responsibility to guide people to these funding sources.
Right.
It is the state's responsibility to pick up the slack even when the home falls down. It is the state's responsibility to enforce laws that will ensure the orderly development of society, and where laws are not in place, to put them in place. It is the state's responsibility to early for early identification of those who are deviant, those who will cause trouble, and do something about it. For example, we should be heavily into counseling and guidance. You have a school, sometimes one or school, 800 children, 2 guidance counselors.
And Stevie, and we accept everything, I accept what you're saying, but isn't it the responsibility of the society to cause the state to live up to their responsibility?
Absolutely. You're right.
That's
You're
my
right.
point.
See, because what she was saying was civil society, and poor civil society. Freddie, let's be frank. Freddie, let's be
See,
frank.
those of us who try to stand up to tell the state what they ought to be doing, they gun you down.
Yeah, Freddie.
They pick you off, you see, because you are not among the croonies.
Churches.
But those of us who speak up for right and justice in this country, they blacklist you. That's the way they control us.
But churches
you
are
see-
overextended.
Yeah.
Yes.
Churches are I can tell you, the poor pastors and leaders, they're overextended. The needs are so great, and they're struggling to meet that. The other civic groups, and you can name them, they are struggling. We are saying that we are in a crisis. These organizations were designed to function in near normal environments. But right now, we need a strong injection of state support.
Yes.
State support. For example, I think the IDB set aside some $25, $30 million years ago. I don't think much of that has reached
This level.
the civic organizations that she is talking about.
Yeah,
But in addition to
yes,
that-
because up until recently, we felt, true or false, that you had to go through the state to access, but now we know that, according to Donnalee Bowe, you don't have to go through the state. You can go directly to the source and get those fundings.
The state-
but the state
no, but the
wants you to
state-
believe
no.
that they're dependent on you to access
The
those
state
funds.
should bring the sources to you.
Yeah, but that's
There
what it
are
should do.
No. There are some of us
Yeah.
who, because of experience and exposure, may know these sources, may know how to access these sources. But the state should have, on a website, for example, everything. And people could go there and address their needs and to get assistance from the state. But see, I don't want to
But let's
Speaking about support, I want to take this opportunity. This year, we are celebrating 60th anniversary of the 14 Bahamas Boys Brigade. Captain Fernie
Yes,
Palmer,
yes.
everybody knows him. They're in need of support.
Yes.
They're in need of support. Captain Palmer is trying to build the center down in Dolphin Drive for the past 30 years. It's still not built. See what I'm saying?
I know.
They're doing a good work, working with young boys.
support.
Young boys are the problem. They're working with the boys. But yet, when they turn around, there's no support.
It will not be, that facility will not be constructed in our lifetime.
It's sad to say, I don't want to believe that.
No, but it's true, unless something drastic occurs. I'm aware of the project, but you don't develop a project like that with a little cookout here.
No,
and
but
a
that's
little
what's been happening.
But I know, and a little stake out there. Years ago, many years, decades ago, when they were talking about a National Youth Service, I was never supportive of the idea as it was presented. Because they were talking about presenting an organization for young men in particular when they were through with school. You're talking about 17, 18 years of age. That's too late.
That's too late.
Too late.
It's
Too
too
late.
late.
Much too late.
So it's
Oh,
too
yeah.
late,
Too late.
all right? It's too late. So we were saying, why not identify stakeholders already functioning, Boys Brigade,
Scouts,
the Scouts, and
Guides,
many other organizations.
Pathfinders.
And the government, the state, should bring these organizations together.
Yep.
Say to them, you've got your own objective, your own plans. Here's what we will do. We will create, with your cooperation, a program for civil training, social development, and we would encourage you to implement that. Include that in your overall, objectives. And we will compensate you. Either we will give you personnel from within the public service to run some of these programs, or we'll give you a grant which of course has to be accounted for.
Yeah, I've seen
that.
that.
Will make it
So,
possible.
I've seen that.
How many times have you and I, in particular, have done the very same thing that you're suggesting? We would go with programs to respective governments. Back 20 years, here is the plan. Here is what we want to do. Here's how we're going to do it. We have the expertise to do it. All we need is the source and the funding. They would take your ideas and they would give it to their cronies within their particular realm, and they would try to do it and will run for 2 or 3 months, and then after that it fizzles out because they don't know or have the passion for it. So what am I saying? We got to get to the point where Bahamians began to believe, civil society, people, normal, common people like us, to cause those who have the controls of these resources to understand that you got to relinquish that stronghold. It cannot be that you're going to simply keep that to control your political aspirants.
Donnalee asked the question, how are we going to do that? We're going to address that just after this final break, because this is an excellent point at which we can segue into the conference, which is one way to do it, providing education and information. Because a lot of people, they know it's wrong. They feel it, they hear it over and over on programs like this. What they really don't know is how to fix it. We need to show them how to fix it. And we're going to start with that when we return.
Only love can save us now. Only love.